Hi everyone, I'm Julie Evensen. I'm the engagement editor for the Oregonian newspaper in Portland, and I am going to talk to you guys a little bit today about doing social media for a local news organization. It's definitely an interesting time to be working in local news. There is a lot of news this year, as you are probably already aware. So I'm going to talk a little bit in this first part about how social media teams are structured at a lot of news organizations, what we do, what skills are useful to have if you are headed that direction with your career. So my experience, and I have worked primarily in digital media for most of my career, has been that the social and digital teams have really become the heart of a modern newsroom in a lot of ways. It's still, the reporting is still the priority, but oftentimes many people who function as social media producers, video producers, digital producers, or engagement experts are actually doing some reporting. They're content creators and editors and producers, just like other folks in the newsroom. What I mean when I say that the digital teams and the social teams at a lot of news organizations have become that core, you have people who are old school copy editors or people who are visual journalists and data journalists, and it's a really cross-functional kind of world to be in. On my team personally at the Oregonian, we're a combined team. We are social media specialists and editors and people who specialize in engagement, but we also have a full team of visual journalists and data journalists. I actually worked as a data analyst prior to my current job. I'll talk a little bit more in one of the other modules about how important math is, which seems a little counterintuitive. You know, we think of ourselves as journalists and we think in terms of words and pictures, but in the digital world, math and data is actually really important. So your digital and social team at a lot of larger news organizations, the Oregonian where I work is one of the larger organizations in the Pacific Northwest. It's one of the oldest newspapers on the West Coast. It's been around since the 1860s. So it predates the Civil War in some version. If you go on to OregonLive.com, you can actually find our archives. We have historical photos going way back. So we've been here for a long time. And we're, a fairly large news organization. Newspapers, print media has shrunk in the last decade for sure, but we still maintain a pretty large presence. And we're fortunate that we have a pretty large social and visuals team. So the makeup of my team, like I was saying before, we have editors. We've had people on the team in the past who've been traditional copy editors. Those are the people who write the headlines and go through reporters' text after their main editor has, to make sure that there are no typos and that the wording is not inelegant, which sometimes slips through. We have a bunch of photographers, we have a bunch of video editors. Most people on our team who do one type of visual journalism are actually trained how to do both. Everybody on our team, including the social producers, is trained in basic video editing and photography. We do photo editing, all that sort of thing. So one of the things that's actually the most interesting about doing this kind of a role in a local newsroom, or even a larger newsroom, a national newsroom, but especially at the local level, you get the opportunity to build a bunch of different skills. I've learned how to write things that I never wrote before. I am particularly proud of my headline writing. It's great. But I had some basic video editing skills coming into this job. I went to a school that's known for its broadcast program, so I've been on camera a few times coming into my current role, and now I do a live Q&A with readers every Friday. If you follow us on Facebook, you'll see me on Fridays, and we talk about some really interesting topics. So one of the other things to know as you're considering what types of journalism you might want to explore is doing social media engagement, being on a team like mine that does some digital production, photo and video, social media, and audience engagement is one of the things that I enjoy the most about it. Is we are one of the teams in the newsroom who works across beats. You know, one day we might be working on an investigative story, and I'll actually talk about a case study of an investigative piece that we did a couple years ago now in one of the next modules. It's pretty interesting. But we get to do everything. You know, we get to work on long reads, we get to work on investigative pieces, we get to work on sports and features, and a lot of breaking news. You know, my team has really been at the core of the protest coverage that the Oregonian has done so far this year. So you get to try a lot of different things, and newsrooms are kind of like that in general. You know, somebody might start out as an editorial assistant for a sports beat and end up as the food critic. That actually happened to a colleague of mine, and it's not a bad way to go. One of the things that makes that type of work particularly rewarding, but also particularly challenging, is the fact that change is the only constant. I think you'll hear people who are working in news media, particularly in the last few years, talk about that. The way people consume content is different. The way that people interact with the news and react to the news is different. You know, we've found that our social team often is on the front lines of getting tips from readers. We're often the ones who are seeing when a story is picking up a lot of steam. You know, you hear the phrase going viral a lot, but even more than that, you know, what's the temperature of what people are talking about on a particular issue? So we do a lot of that. We find stories, and we interact with readers and help reporters find sources.